Before we begin, if you're finding peace through these sessions, we'd love for you to take a moment, when you're awake, of course, to leave a review and subscribe on whatever channel you're listening on. Your support helps others discover this space and join our journey to restful sleep. Welcome to Slothful Slumber, the podcast where we transform the vast knowledge of the internet into a gentle lullaby for your mind. I'm your host, Luna Dreamwell, and I'm here to guide you on a journey to tranquility through the soothing cadence of Wikipedia articles. Each episode will delve into the most wonderfully mundane and sleep-inducing topics, helping you drift off into a realm of serene dreams. So find your comfortable space, close your eyes, and let the dull hum of information carry you into a restful slumber. This Wikipedia article is titled Magazine. A magazine is a periodical publication, print or digital, produced on a regular schedule that contains any of a variety of subject-oriented textual and visual content forms. Magazines are generally financed by advertising, purchase price, prepaid subscriptions, or by a combination of the three. They are categorized by their frequency of publication, i.e., as weeklies, monthlies, quarterlies, etc. Their target audiences, e.g., women's and trade magazines, their subjects of focus, e.g., popular science and religious, and their tones or approach, e.g., works of satire or humor. Appearance on the cover of print magazines has historically been understood to convey a place of honor or distinction to an individual or event. Term origin and definition. Origin. The etymology of the word magazine suggests derivation from the Arabic makhazin, the broken plural of makhzen meaning military storehouse, that comes to English via Middle French magazine and Italian magazzino. In its original sense, the word magazine referred to a storage space or device. Definitions. In the case of written publication, it refers to a collection of written articles. Hence, magazine publications share the moniker with storage units for military equipment such as gunpowder, artillery, and firearm magazines, and in French and Russian adopted from the French as magazine, retailers such as department stores. A distinction can be made between magazines and journals. In the technical sense, a journal has continuous pagination throughout a volume. Thus, Bloomberg Businessweek, which starts each issue anew with page 1, is a magazine, but the Journal of Business Communication, which continues the same sequence of pagination throughout the coterminous year, is a journal. Another distinction regard peer review, although some professional or trade publications are also peer-reviewed. For example, the Journal of Accountancy. Non-peer-reviewed academic or professional publications are generally professional magazines. That a publication calls itself a journal does not make it a journal in the technical sense. The Wall Street Journal is actually a newspaper. Distribution. Print magazines can be distributed through the mail, through sales by newsstands, bookstores, or other vendors, or through free distribution at selected pickup locations. Electronic distribution methods can include social media, email, news aggregators, and visibility of a publication's website and search engine results. The traditional subscription business models for distribution fall into three main categories. Paid circulation. In this model, the magazine is sold to readers for a price, either on a per-issue basis or by subscription, where an annual fee or monthly price is paid and issues are sent by post to readers. Paid circulation allows for defined readership statistics. Non-paid circulation. This means that there is no cover price and issues are given away. For example, in street dispensers, on airlines, or included with other products or publications. Because this model involves giving issues away to unspecific populations. The statistics only entail the number of issues distributed and not who reads them. Controlled circulation. This is the model used by many trade magazines, industry-based periodicals, distributed only to qualifying readers, often for free and determined by some form of survey. Because of costs, e.g., printing and postage associated with the medium of print, publishers may not distribute free copies to everyone who requests one unqualified leads. Instead, they operate under controlled circulation, deciding who may receive free subscriptions based on each person's qualification as a member of the trade and likelihood of having corporate purchasing authority as determined by job title. This allows a high level of certainty that advertisements will be received by the advertiser's target audience, and it avoids wasted printing and distribution expenses. This latter model was widely used before the rise of the World Wide Web and is still employed by some titles. For example, in the United Kingdom, a number of computer industry magazines use this model, including Computer Weekly and Computing, and in finance, Waters Magazine. For the global media industry, an example would be Video Age International. History. The earliest example of magazines was Erbauliche Monatsunterredungen, a literary and philosophy magazine, which was launched in 1663 in Germany. The Gentleman's Magazine, first published in 1741 in London, was the first general interest magazine. Edward Cave, who edited the Gentleman's Magazine under the pen name Sylvanus Urban, was the first to use the term magazine on the analogy of a military storehouse, the quote being a monthly collection to treasure up, as in a magazine. Founded by Herbert Ingram in 1842, the Illustrated London News was the first illustrated weekly news magazine. Britain. The oldest consumer magazine still in print is the Scots Magazine, which was first published in 1739. Though multiple changes in ownership and gaps in publication totaling over 90 years weaken that claim. Lloyd's List was founded in Edward Lloyd's England coffee shop in 1734. The platform is still updated daily. It has not been published as a printed magazine since 2013. France. Under the Ancien Régime, the most prominent magazines were Mercure de France, Journal des Savants, founded in 1665 for scientists, and Gazette de France, founded in 1631. Jean Loret was one of France's first journalists. He disseminated the weekly news of music, dance, and Parisian society from 1650 until 1665 in verse in what he called a Gazette burlesque, assembled in 3 volumes of La Muse Historique. The French press lagged a generation behind the British, for they catered to the needs of the aristocracy, while the newer British counterparts were oriented toward the middle and working classes. Periodicals were censored by the central government in Paris. They were not totally quiescent politically. Often they criticized church abuses and bureaucratic ineptitude. They supported the monarchy, and they played at most a small role in stimulating the revolution. During the revolution, new periodicals played central roles as propaganda organs for various factions. Jean-Paul Marat, born 1743, died 1793, was the most prominent editor. His L'Ami du Peuple advocated vigorously for the rights of the lower classes against the enemies of the people Marat hated. It closed when he was assassinated. After 1800, Napoleon reimposed strict censorship. Magazines flourished after Napoleon left in 1815. Most were based in Paris, and most emphasized literature, poetry, and stories. They served religious, cultural, and political communities. In times of political crisis, they expressed and helped shape the views of their readership, and thereby were major elements in the changing political culture. For example, there were 8 Catholic periodicals in 1830 in Paris. None were officially owned or sponsored by the Church, and they reflected a range of opinion among educated Catholics about current issues such as the 1830 July Revolution that overthrew the Bourbon monarchy. Several were strong supporters of the Bourbon kings, but all 8 ultimately urged support for the new government, putting their appeals in terms of preserving civil order. They often discussed the relationship between church and state. Generally, they urged priests to focus on spiritual matters and not engage in politics. Historian M. Patricia Daugherty says this process created a distance between the church and the new monarch and enabled Catholics to develop a new understanding of church-state relationships and the source of political authority. Turkey. The Moniteur Ottoman was a gazette written in French and first published in 1831 on the order of Mahmud II. It was the first official gazette of the Ottoman Empire, edited by Alexandra Black at the expense of the Sublime Porte. Its name perhaps referred to the French newspaper Le Moniteur Universel. It was issued weekly. Takvim-i Vakayi was published a few months later, intended as a translation of the Moniteur into Ottoman Turkish. After having been edited by former consul for Denmark, Emir Franceschi, and later on by Hasuna de Guise, it was lastly edited by Lucien Rouet. However, facing the hostility of embassies, it was closed in the 1840s. Satire. Satirical magazines of Turkey have a long tradition. One of the earliest satirical magazines was Diogen, which was launched in 1869. There are around 20 satirical magazines. The leading ones are Penguin 70,000 weekly circulation, Le Monde 50,000, and Uykusuz. Historical examples include Oğuz Aral's magazine Gırgır, which reached a circulation of 500,000 in the 1970s, and Marco Pasha, launched in 1946. Others include El Manyak and Lombak. United States. Colonial America. Publishing was a very expensive industry in colonial times. Paper and printer's ink were taxed imported goods, and their quality was inconsistent. Interstate tariffs and a poor road system hindered distribution even on a regional scale. Many magazines were launched, most failing within a few editions, but publishers kept trying. Benjamin Franklin is said to have envisioned one of the first magazines of the American colonies in 1741, the General Magazine and Historical Chronicle. The Pennsylvania Magazine, edited by Thomas Paine, ran only for a short time, but was a very influential publication during the Revolutionary War. The final issue, containing the text of the Declaration of Independence, was published in 1776. Late 19th century. In the mid-19th century, monthly magazines gained popularity. They were general interest to begin containing some news vignettes, poems, history, political events, and social discussion. Unlike newspapers, they were more of a monthly record of current events, along with entertaining stories, poems, and pictures. The first periodicals to branch out from news were Harper's and The Atlantic, which focused on fostering the arts. Both Harper's and The Atlantic persist to this day, with Harper's being a cultural magazine and The Atlantic focusing mainly on world events. Early publications of Harper's even held famous works, such as early publications of Moby Dick, or famous events, such as the laying of the world's first transatlantic telegraph cable. However, the majority of early content was trickled down from British events. The development of the magazines stimulated an increase in literary criticism and political debate, moving towards more opinionated pieces from the objective newspapers. The increased time between prints and the greater amount of space to write provided a forum for public arguments by scholars and critical observers. The early periodical predecessors to magazines started to evolve to modern definition in the late 1800s. Works slowly became more specialized, and the general discussion or cultural periodicals were forced to adapt to a consumer market which yearned for more localization of issues and events. Progressive Era, 1890s to 1920s. Mass circulation magazines became much more common after 1900, with circulations in the hundreds of thousands of subscribers. Some passed the million mark in the 1920s. It was an age of mass media. Because of the rapid expansion of national advertising, the cover price fell sharply to about 10 cents. One cause was the heavy coverage of corruption in politics, local government, and big business, especially by muckrakers. They were journalists who wrote for popular magazines to expose social and political sins and shortcomings. They relied on their own investigative journalism reporting. Muckrakers often worked to expose social ills and corporate and political corruption. Muckraking magazines, notably McClure's, took on corporate monopolies and crooked political machines, while raising public awareness of chronic urban poverty, unsafe working conditions, and social issues such as child labor. The journalists who specialized in exposing waste, corruption, and scandal operated at the state and local level, like Ray Stannard Baker, George Creel, and Brand Whitlock. Others, including Lincoln Steffens, exposed political corruption in many large cities. Ida Tarbell went after John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil Company. Samuel Hopkins Adams, in 1905, showed the fraud involved in many patent medicines. Upton Sinclair's 1906 novel, The Jungle, gave a horrid portrayal of how meat was packed, and also in 1906, David Graham Phillips unleashed a blistering indictment of the U.S. Senate. Roosevelt gave these journalists their nickname when he complained that they were not being helpful by raking up all the muck. 21st century. According to the Research Department of Statista, closures of magazines outnumbered launches in North America during 2009. Although both figures declined during 2010 to 2015, launches outnumbered closures in each of those years, sometimes by a 3-to-1 ratio. Focusing more narrowly, MediaFinder.com found that 93 new magazines were launched during the first 6 months of 2014, while only 30 closed in that time frame. The category which produced the most new publications was regional interest, of which 6 new magazines were launched, including 12th and Broad and Craft Beer and Brewing. However, 2 magazines had to change their print schedules. Johnson Publishing's Jet stopped printing regular issues, making the transition to digital format, though still printing an annual print edition. Ladies' Home Journal stopped their monthly schedule and home delivery for subscribers to become a quarterly, newsstand-only, special interest publication. According to statistics from the end of 2013, subscription levels for 22 of the top 25 magazines declined from 2012 to 2013, with just Time Glamour and ESPN the magazine gaining numbers. However, by 2024, some titles, notably outdoors magazines, appeared to be growing in popularity. Women's magazines. The seven sisters of American women's magazines are Ladies' Home Journal, Good Housekeeping McCall's, Women's Day, Red Book Family Circle, and Better Homes and Gardens. Some magazines among them, Godey's Ladies' Book and Harper's Bazaar, were intended exclusively for a female audience, emphasizing the traditional gender roles of the 19th century. Harper's Bazaar was the first to focus exclusively on couture fashion accessories and textiles. The inclusion of didactic content about housekeeping may have increased the appeal of the magazine for a broader audience of women and men concerned about the frivolity of a fashion magazine. Categories. Based on periodicity, magazines are often categorized by their frequencies of publication, e.g., as weeklies, monthlies, quarterlies, etc. Based on target audience and subject. Women's fashion. The first women's magazine, targeted toward wives and mothers, was published in 1852. In the 1920s, new magazines appealed to young German women with a sensuous image and advertisements for the appropriate clothes and accessories they would want to purchase. The glossy pages of Die Dame and Das Blatt der Hausfrau displayed the Neue Frauen, New Girl, what Americans called the flapper. This ideal young woman was chic, financially independent, and an eager consumer of the latest fashions. Magazines kept her up to date on fashion, arts, sports, and modern technology, such as automobiles and telephones. Parenting. Other women's magazines have influenced views of motherhood and child-rearing through the use of advice columns, advertisements, and articles related to parenting. Mass-marketed women's magazines have shaped and transformed cultural values related to parenting practices. As such, magazines targeting women and parenthood have exerted power and influence over ideas about motherhood and child-rearing. Religion. Religious groups have used magazines for spreading and communicating religious doctrine for over 100 years. For instance, the Watchtower magazine of the Jehovah's Witnesses was founded by Charles Taze Russell under the title Zion's Watchtower and Herald of Christ's Presence in July 1879. Celebrity gossip, human interest. Magazines publishing stories and photos of high-profile individuals and celebrities have long been a popular format in the United States. In 2019, People magazine ranked second behind ESPN magazine in total reach, with a reported reach of 98.51 million. Professional. Professional magazines, also called trade magazines or business-to-business magazines, are targeted to readers employed in particular industries. These magazines typically cover industry trends and news of interest to professionals in the industry. Subscriptions often come with membership in a professional association. Professional magazines may derive revenue from advertisement placements or advertorials by companies selling products and services to a specific professional audience. Examples include Advertising Age, Automotive News, Broadcast, The Bookseller, and The Stage. Cover. Being on the cover of a magazine is sometimes considered an honor or distinction. Examples are one-time common statements to the effect that an individual had appeared on the cover of Time or of the Rolling Stone, etc.